Alright everybody, I am going to give you a tour around the interface of Photoshop, and I'm going to show you how we can customize the interface on our end of Photoshop to match what we need as photographers. I think that it's interesting. Photoshop has been around for 37, 38, something like that years, right? Quite a long time. And very few things have left Photoshop. Everything has been thrown into Photoshop. New things have been added in. Very few things have been pushed out. And so Photoshop has become this very cumbersome software, right? And I think it's interesting, like, I'll talk to young photo students or whoever, photographers, and they're like, oh yeah, I know how to do everything with Photoshop. And I am always like scratching my head because I'm like, I mean, as a photographer, I use maybe 5% of what Photoshop can do, because the other 95% is either outdated, old ways of doing things, old tools, old processes, old filters, all that stuff that just have not ever disappeared. And so what we're really going to use Photoshop for is just like 5% of what it does, right? But I also want you guys to know how to do things like, heavy photo manipulation. But I want you, the foundation is just those basic, color correction, basic edits to photos. And that's all stuff that we can do and set our interface up to be very specific for. So, first thing I want to do is I want to point you over here to this right corner. There's a drop-down menu that says a bunch of different workspaces, right? So I think by default it's set to essential. We can always go and click these other ones and we'll see that different tools and different menus get popped up based on what they are, right? Because people, and it's not just that old stuff has just been kept in Photoshop. Photoshop now does a ton of stuff, right? There's painters that use it. There's graphic artists that use it. There's people that do motion art and graphics, 3D stuff, right? We don't need all of that. That's right. We don't need all these text tools and all this stuff. And there is a photography setting, right? So here's the photo setting, and I think that it's pretty good, right? You could use this and probably have all of your needs met. But I'm going to set it up very specifically and show you how to save your own preset workspace so that you have just the tools that you're going to use, and you won't have this like cluttered desktop or this cluttered screen of all these tools that you're not going to need. So to do that, the first thing I do is I do go to photography, go there, and I want to give you a tour around a little bit. Over here we have, these are our tools. This is the toolbar right here. We can set the toolbar up in a row of two rows, or one row. I always do one just to save space. That's up to you how you do it. Up here we have tabs. If I brought another image in here, let me just do that real quick. Let me bring another image into Photoshop. Oh, let's just open the image here. That's a raw file. That's a very out of focus raw file. So now, right, we have tabs up here. So I have this image, I have this image. You can have, I don't even know how many images you could have open in Photoshop. Obviously, it's going to slow your computer down if you have a ton, but you can have a bunch open if you want. And skip through from tabs right there. You can break these free into their own tabs, right? So I have this image free floating out here. I could put it back into a tab like that. Let's go back to this image, get rid of this one. I'm gonna just hit don't save. Okay, so that's how that works. We have the basic Photoshop menus, just like every software on a Mac. You have the menu up here. You have these rulers and guides. If you don't have these rulers, don't worry. I'm going to show you how to turn them on. I actually do use these rulers, so I would suggest you do turn them on. Over here you have these panels, right? Property, info, actions, history. We don't need all of these, just some of them. Down here we have layers, channels, paths. And then right here we have this kind of quick access to some tools like, what is this one? Clone source. I don't even know what this is. Paragraph character. Right? So we have these tools. Some of them we need, some of them we don't need. So I'm just going to go through and show you how I'm going to set up my Photoshop. And then as you follow along with demos, if you set your Photoshop up the same way, it'll look just like mine. So up here, we are going to use the History tab. Actions, we're not going to use. So if we want to close something, oops, sorry, I did that pretty quick. Let's go to Properties. I'm not going to use Properties, so I'm just going to hit Control, click on it, and I'm going to hit Close. And it just gets rid of it. So up here, I'm just going to keep info and history. And if I want to add something, I do want to add something in this. I want info, history, and I actually want one other menu. So I'm going to go over here to View, Window, and I want to put the Navigator. So I'm going to click Navigator, and it'll open Navigator. So Navigator is just, as you open these things, they can be free floating, right? I could take History and make it free floating too. I don't like mine set up that way because it just gets too cluttered. I like this little tab view, so I'm going to put History over here. I'm going to take Navigator. I'm going to also put it over here. Okay, so now I have Info, History, and Navigator right there. That's great. Layers, we are going to use layers so much in this class, so we're going to keep that one open. Channels, we're not going to need. Control, click, close. Paths, we're not going to need. Control, click, close. So now I just have layers, Navigator, History, Info. Looking good. I like how this is looking. You can take these, if you float your cursor in between these things, you can kind of change the dimension of them, however you want that. On this tool line here, so these are all just kind of tools that are, they're kind of, you can expand them and collapse them based on this little arrow situation here. These things we're not going to need, right? Character, paragraph, device preview, adjustments. Some of these are okay. Some of them are like, we're probably not going to need them. But it's funny because they do come up on preloaded on the photography workstation. But I want to get rid of these, so I'm just going to go Control, close, Control, close, Control, close, Control, close. And as you learn more about Photoshop, you can decide how you want to set yours up. I'm just showing you how I set mine up for, just so that I have like maximum view of what I'm doing here. So this is pretty close to how I set mine up. The only other thing that I would do is sometimes you don't have these rulers on by default. So you're going to want to go View, Rulers. So if I turn it off, your Photoshop might look like this, where you don't have rulers. I love using the rulers, so I'm going to go, where did I find that at? View, Rulers. Boom. This is, I want to see here, this is exactly how I set up my Photoshop. I love how this looks. It's clean. It's just stripped down to just the things that I'm going to use. And so now I'm going to save this. So I want to save this workspace so that every time I log into Photoshop, boom, it's set up just like this. So I'm going to go up here back to that drop-down menu with the workspaces. That for some reason is not opening for me. Uh-oh. That's weird. Oh, there we go. I don't know why that was working, why that was like blacked out there. It was just a little glitch in the screen. So I'm just going to go down here. So now it's set up, right? I could go click on any of these and it's going to go back to the default. I'm going to say New Workspace. And I'm going to call this Buzzy. You can call it whatever you want, right? There's more things that we could do, right? Panel locations will be saved in this workspace, but we can make our own keyboard shortcuts, we can make our own toolbars, we can make our own menus. We're not going to dive into that in this class, but it is something that's pretty cool that you can do. So I'm just going to hit save. Okay, so now if I go back to this menu, now we see that I have the preset workspaces, but I also have Buzzy. So if I come in and I'm working on my computer and somebody else uses it, and I come back to it and I'm like, wait, what is this situation? I definitely don't need any of that stuff. I can just go and click Buzzy, and it'll go back to exactly how I want it. I think that's super helpful, and it's going to be super helpful for you guys because as I demo all of this stuff, this is how I'm going to have my Photoshop set up. Okay, so I think that's all I want to cover in this video. Some of you might be using a newer version of Photoshop. On the computer that I actually edit photos on, this is my laptop that I'm recording this on, I have CC 2017. On the computer that I actually edit photos on, I have the CC 2020 Photoshop. It looks very similar to this, and all these same things are applicable to that new update compared to the 2017 version. So if you do have any questions, let me know. But that is the basic tour of the interface of Photoshop. Oh, actually, before I go, I do want to show you. So over here in our tools, which we're going to dive into, notice that there are tools that have little arrows next to them, like this one, and this one, and this one, and there's some that don't, like this one, this one. So the ones that have arrows next to them, we can control-click, and a little preview will come up. It means that there's another tool hidden under that tool, right, to condense space. let's see, right? So we can select different tools, and they're all grouped, you know, they do similar things, right? Like this is a selection tool. You can do a rectangle selection or a elliptical selection. So that's really useful that you have those combined in there. You can always float your cursor over, and it will tell you what the tool is, right? So this is the eraser tool. If I float over, this yellow tab will pop up, eraser tool, E. What that's telling me is E is the keyboard shortcut to access that tool. If I go, let me see if I can remember what a tool, let's see, C is crop, right? C is crop. So I just hit C. So if I click on a different tool and I hit C on my keyboard, the crop tool opens. So, you know, you don't have to know your keyboard shortcuts right now, but you might find them very useful. They are time saving. But don't stress yourself out about that stuff now. Right now it's pretty easy to just click on these tools. So that's really useful to know. And like I said, this is how I set up my Photoshop. It's how I recommend you set up your Photoshop, but as you grow as an artist and as a editor, you can change how you do things. Okay, well, I will be back in the next video, so see you guys later.